I'm here with Sheriff Davis here in Henderson County. Sheriff, tonight we're here at the public library in downtown Hendersonville discussing the 287. Is that correct?
Absolutely.
Right. Well, let's, before we start filming the actual forum tonight, give the viewers out there an idea of what 287 really is.
287G is a federal code of statute that basically allows us to begin the deportation process at the local level. We have a partnership with Immigration's Customs Enforcement, and people who are identified and let me back up, anybody that's arrested by a sheriff's deputy, police officer, state trooper, anybody like that, they actually bring them to our detention center. There we have the capability now to identify people, and they are subsequently deported if they do not have the appropriate documentation.
Now, how long have you had the 287 program?
It's since 1st of July. 1st
of July. Now, what's been the successes that you could call at this early on?
Well, it's the public, it's overwhelmingly positive. We know firsthand that we're seeing fewer calls that we've had to answer. It gives our deputies more quality time to go out and do the jobs they're supposed to do. We're not running down the road on fictitious warrants, or fictitious people with fictitious addresses when they fail to appear. So it's going to ultimately save us man hours. Some of the successes that we've had here at the Sheriff's Office early on, I'd like to point out it was other counties that have seen them as well. For instance, Alamance County, I was speaking with the sheriff there, and he says that there was a 32% drop in their crime index in the first year of 287G. That is a stunning amount. Anytime you can get the crime rate to even drop 1%, that is wonderful.
Absolutely. Let me ask you this now: when the 287's in a county, does nearby counties is it encouraged for them to also join it, or should they stay back and spread that 287 out?
It's a case-by-case basis that the federal government identifies what is in their best interest, because they have to go based on demographics and geographics, and are they able to support the program at wherever it is. There are many requirements that detention centers simply cannot qualify for. There's a minimum amount of bed space, personnel. There's a long laundry list of things that have to be done.
Mm-hmm. How many officers do you have dedicated for the 287 program?
When it's fully up and running, 9.
9 officers. Mm-hmm. And the training for that, how long does that training last for at a line officer's level?
It's the same exact training that immigration's agents go through, and they go through 1 month of training, particularly relating to the deportation identification process.
And before I wrap it up, we hear some critics of the 287 say it's a profile type program. I'd like for you to respond to that.
Absolutely absurd. It's they have to be under arrest for the violation of a state crime to be placed in, to be identified to begin with. In my view, it's nothing more than a smokescreen for people to continue their illegal activities. We've identified so many people from so many countries, and a very successful program, and we look forward to ultimately reduce the crime rate. If the program, if we have any program to reduce crime in any capacity, I would certainly take that. I have a sworn duty to uphold, and if there's another program that comes along that affects citizen, non-citizen alike and gets them out of my jurisdiction, then I will pursue that.
Okay. Sheriff, thank you for chatting with me, and look forward tonight to the...
Standard. I'm Gary Pritchard, President of the Henderson County Citizens for Change, HCCC. HCCC is a grassroots organization that grew out of the primary campaign for Barack Obama Following the primary, we organized and registered as a political action group because this was the only way we could legally support various political issues and candidates and still maintain our independent status. The purpose of HCCC, according to our Constitution, is to work for a more peaceful and equitable community, state, country, and world, to support local and regional issues that reflect our concern for peace and justice, and to identify, recruit, and support political candidates who manifest a sincere concern for all the people and who demonstrate integrity and trustworthiness in their statements and activities. Membership in HCC is open to any citizen of Henderson County who desires to support this purpose and who pays the annual dues of $1. Now, besides myself, our officers include Phil Alexander, who you'll be hearing from in a little bit. Is our second vice president. Gail Kemp is the secretary. Fred Lentz is our treasurer. If you want to become a member of HCCC, you can go to our online site, hccconline.info. That's hccconline.info. And you can register there to become a member. I would like to thank you for taking the time to come out this evening to our forum. Our purpose tonight is to increase understanding about the immigration issue, how it affects the presidential campaign, and how it may impact our local community. Let me be very clear, we are not here to criticize either John McCain or Barack Obama or our local sheriff. Rather, those issues that impact our community. The Pew Hispanic Center estimates that there are about 47 million Hispanics in the United States. This includes immigrants from more than 20 South American countries. The Mexican portion of this is about 30 million. The Department of Homeland Security estimates that there are about 385,000 Hispanic residents in North Carolina, and about 25% are undocumented. This translates to about 93,000 Hispanic undocumented residents in North Carolina. Now note that a person may be listed as undocumented even though he or she arrived here legally. For example, a person may have come to North Carolina under a work permit or with a legal visa, and then, whether intentionally or accidentally, his or her permit or visa may have expired. Thus, such a person becomes an illegal or undocumented alien. In the meantime, this same person may have gotten married or had children, and consequently, the children are U.S. citizens by birth. So we do have families where one member may be undocumented, but other members of the family are legal residents or citizens. We also have families who may have come here legally to work and their visas expired, but their children were brought here as infants and have grown up in this country and may not even speak Spanish. This is the only home they know. So the solution to the problem is not as simple as to deport all of the undocumented residents. If we were to do that, say we could round up all 93,000 undocumented residents in North Carolina and send them back to Mexico or wherever they came from, we would create a nightmare for families, for school systems, for medical facilities, and for law enforcement. What would we do with the children who were born here, or the spouse who is a citizen, often dependent on the income of his or her undocumented spouse? So these are some of the concerns I have for Henderson County. Estimates of the Hispanic population for Henderson County range from 10,000 to 13,000. Assuming the percentage of undocumented persons is about the same as the state, that would mean we have about 3,000 undocumented residents in Henderson County. I'm sure the Sheriff's Department may have more specific statistics than I do. It also means that if my statistics are right, that we have 10,000 Hispanic residents who have a legitimate right to be here. So when we go to Walmart and we see all those Hispanic people, we need to remember that the vast majority, more than 75%, are hardworking, legal residents, many of whom are doing their best to learn our language and customs, even while working 50 to 75 hours a week to support their families. And like immigrants of every nation who have come to this country over the years, they are striving to make a new life here. I think it is important to remember that very few of us are Native Americans. Do we have any Native Americans here tonight? I don't know about you. My great-great-great-grandparents came across the Atlantic Ocean from Scotland. They didn't have to learn English. I was very fortunate to be born and reared in the heart of the USA. But that does not make me any more industrious or more deserving of respect than someone who is a first-generation immigrant. The fact is, whether we like it or not, the world is one world, and we are all citizens of planet Earth. Yet, to read the news articles about the 287G program, one might be led to believe that we have a Hispanic crime wave in Henderson County. This is just not true. The public perception may be that most Hispanics are undocumented or illegal, and this has a chilling effect on many families. It becomes more difficult to find work or housing. They are less likely to use government services, and they are more likely to be asked to produce documents to prove their legal status. It also creates an atmosphere of fear because most Hispanics may know or have family members who are residing here without proper documentation. In many cases, they simply failed to renew a work permit or visa after it expired, but the fear resides there nevertheless. Now, when it comes to our presidential candidates, we find a surprising amount of agreement between both Barack Obama and John McCain. Both agree that our undocumented population is exploding. The number of undocumented immigrants in the country has increased more than 40% since the year 2000. Every year, more than 500,000 people come illegally or illegally overstay their visas. Immigration bureaucracy is broken. The immigration bureaucracy is overwhelmed, forcing legal immigrants to wait years for applications. And both Obama and McCain agree that we need to secure our national sovereignty. Our borders need to be recognized and preserved. Both candidates also agree that we must have a comprehensive reform of our immigration system. Now, McCain's program would put a heavy emphasis on prosecuting employers who hire undocumented workers. But if you look at the process that employers have to go through in order to hire documented workers, you would understand why they do that. Obama, on the other hand, tends to put more emphasis on bringing undocumented people out of the shadows. He also stresses the need to be sensitive to keeping families together. Both agree that we must develop a more user-friendly system to allow undocumented workers, undocumented residents to become citizens. We need a workable mechanism for those undocumented people who are already living in the United States to make progress towards citizenship. Under McCain's plan, all undocumented individuals will be required to enroll in a program to resolve their status. This program will use background checks to identify criminals for prosecution and deportation, similar to the 287G program. The remaining undocumented persons will have to learn English, pay back taxes and fines, and pass a citizenship course as part of a path to legal status. Obama supports similar plans and agrees with McCain that those currently in the U.S. illegally will have to go to the back of the line and should not be given legal status ahead of those who are following the law. Both candidates recognize the need to address in an expedited manner the status of individuals brought here illegally as minors through no will or intention of their own. And both candidates agree that action must be taken to reduce the backlog of people waiting in line for green cards. Well, that's the position of the presidential candidates. Surprising agreement there. The next part of our program this evening will be a presentation by Phil of a statement that was prepared by some of the more conservative church groups in the United States. So Phil, if you want to.
Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I was raised by a strict Southern Baptist couple, just about 20 miles up the road, a little hole in the road called Asheville. And later on, as I got into my adult life, I was actually confirmed Episcopalian. I am a practicing Episcopalian, so I've kind of seen the whole gamut of at least the Christian denomination, if you will. What really speaks to me in this, and I will say I share a lot of the same concerns that you do as far as immigration. At the same time, I also work in a facility where there's a large population of Hispanics. And I will say that I've noticed in more than 2 years there that the Hispanics have stayed longer. They have been loyal, they have been hard workers. I really don't know, at least in our workplace, what we would do without them. So yes, there is a bit of xenophobia, I think, involved with this, fear of other people. But when you hear what these ministers have to say, I think you'll recognize, particularly if you're from the more conservative side of the spectrum, you'll recognize some of these evangelical leaders. Joel Osteen, Robert Morris, Jack Hayford. There were 3 of the leaders that came together and formed the Christians for Comprehensive Immigration Reform. Really what it is a coalition of Christian organizations, churches, and leaders from across the theological and political spectrum. They're united in support of comprehensive immigration reform. Despite differences on other issues, they're seeking reform because they share a set of common moral and theological principles that compel all Christians to love and care for the stranger among us. They list the following reasons for their position, and each of these reasons have biblical references. We can share those with you after the meeting, but in order to expedite, I will just run through them. First of all, we believe that all people, regardless of national origin, are made in the image of God and deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. Second, we believe there is an undeniable biblical responsibility to love and show compassion for the stranger among us. We believe that immigrants are our neighbors, both literally and figuratively, and we are to love our neighbors as ourselves and show mercy to our neighbors in need, as in Jesus' story of the Good Samaritan. We believe in the rule of law, but we also believe that we are to oppose unjust laws and systems that harm and oppress people made in God's image, especially the vulnerable. These biblical principles call us to support comprehensive immigration reform legislation that includes the following elements. Again, I'm quoting this group. Border enforcement and protection initiatives that are consistent with Christian humanitarian values, while allowing the authorities to enforce the law and implement American immigration policy. Reforms in our family-based immigration system that maintains birthright citizenship while drastically reducing the waiting times for separated families. Temporary designation for immigrant workers and their families already in the United States with the option of a path towards permanent legal status and citizenship upon satisfaction of specific criteria. A viable guest worker program that creates legal avenues for workers and their families to enter our country and work in a safe, legal, and orderly manner with their rights and due process fully protected. Their statement concludes, we call upon President Bush and the Congress to seek humane and holistic reform consistent with these Christian principles within this legislative year. Immigration reform must reject anti-immigrant measures and be pro-work and pro-family, thus strengthening the common good and enriching the vitality of America. Again, we have a URL, a website citation we can provide for you after the meeting if you want to see any of us. Thank you very much.
You'll find on the back table a statement called A Moral Perspective on Undocumented Residents. That statement, when you look at it, you'll find a lot of the same language that's in that document that Phil shared with you, as well as some information from the North Carolina Council of Churches. So regardless of which side of the theological spectrum you come from, the church is saying we need to deal with our immigrants in a much more welcoming way. I'm happy now to introduce to you Daniel Benavides, who is representing the Latino Advocacy Coalition, and he's going to share with you some of the impact of 287G as it may have been experienced in the Latino community. Daniel.
Good evening. I don't pretend to be an expert on immigration law, but I am in the community and I work with a lot of different aspects of the community, and particularly with the Latino community, and I can say safely that I believe I can represent some of the things that I've heard, some of the fear that I've seen in the community. We have a population in Henderson County that is living in fear right now of being able to express themselves, of being able to receive the services that they may need. In a particular case here that I'm going to tell you about, there was a mother and father who brought their 2-year-old child to a health center in town, and the child was diagnosed with jaundice, and which is a yellowing of the skin, a medical condition. Was asked to bring the child back the next day to make sure the child was going in the proper direction. Apparently the child took a turn for the worse during the evening, and the mother was reluctant to bring the child into the health center. At the end of the afternoon, when father arrived from work, he insisted on taking the child into the health center. The child was diagnosed with a new congestive heart failure and was admitted into the hospital and had surgery. And the pediatrician claims that the child most likely would have died had they not come in. This is a case of someone who is fearful of going out, driving perhaps without a license, and with the potential of being deported. I have probably 2 or 3 more cases similar to that I could read to you, but I'm not going to. I will tell you that a social worker friend of mine that works with Mainstay has reported that the Latino referrals at Mainstay, which is our local domestic violence shelter, has dropped by approximately 90%. They're getting very few people referred into their facility for domestic violence issues. There's another agency in town that has parenting classes that the instructors have claimed that approximately 3/4 of the Latino students in the parenting classes have dropped out of the classes. This is a fear, a climate of fear that we have in Henderson County, and it's largely due to the 287G program and the anti-immigrant climate that we have fostered in our community. I believe that our community should be more welcoming and open-minded and open-hearted to this population.
When we were talking about this event and how we could make it happen, I stopped by the Sheriff's Department and became acquainted with Greg Cochran. Greg is a person that I think is very sensitive to his position and is very knowledgeable of the 287G program, and is going to share with us some information about that how it is working in Henderson County. And then following that, we'll have an opportunity for you to ask questions of him or of Daniel or of myself or Phil. Mr. Cochran? By the way, thank you to Sheriff Davis for coming to be with us.
Thank you. We've actually had just a little bit of a change of plan. I've not really had a chance to talk to Gary a whole lot this afternoon since we've been here. The sheriff was able to make it. He had a different meeting that had already been scheduled, but decided that he needed to come on over here and talk with you folks and explain to you a little bit what his thought process was for going with the 287G program and how successful it's been and stuff. So why don't we just, maybe I'll talk a little bit afterwards and let Sheriff Davis talk to you first. Thanks.
All right, when we're talking about 287G, I think it's really important to point out that what we need to put aside for, at least momentarily, I'm not talking about health issues, I'm not talking about medical, educational, I'm not talking about any of that. I'm talking about criminals, okay? Criminals. And a criminal is a criminal in any language and any race that you can care to name. So one thing that I want you to bear in mind is I have a sworn duty to everyone here that lives in Henderson County. I'm going to give you a PowerPoint here. Some of the images may be a little disturbing, but you need to see them. You need to hear the total side of what we're facing in law enforcement daily. And I don't think there's any way that I can do that if you're not exposed to at least a portion of what the men and women of law enforcement are going through every day. Okay? 287G, for anyone who doesn't know, it's a section of federal statute which permits the partnership between the federal government and local law enforcement. Okay? It's just a code now. Now, 287G is an option. Why do we need that option here? Let me give you a couple of stories here that faced me right before, well, one of them right before I became sheriff. I went to a meeting, it was called a drug commanders meeting, from the DEA task force. Everybody knows DEA, Federal Drug Enforcement Administration. And it was up in Asheville. And there were drug commanders there from all over western North Carolina, as far east as Hickory. And it was the people in the drug units, plus the people that were in charge of those drug units, meeting with federal liaisons there, all the way to Murphy. And in that meeting, repeatedly, I heard over and over again, all of our drugs are coming from Henderson County. It was very embarrassing to be in that meeting, to say the least. Now, the DEA has a term for drug trafficking organizations. They don't even call them Latino drug trafficking organizations. They call them MTOs, Mexican Trafficking Organizations. The drug commander that is in charge for the state said at that meeting, he said Mexican cartels have taken ironclad control of almost every drug market in Henderson County and western North Carolina. So clearly something had to be done. Excuse me. Also, I'd like to point out, there was something that happened, it was probably about a month or two after I became sheriff. And there was a lady and husband that came in to my office, and they had a meeting with me, and it was about a terrible incident that occurred, and it was a fire. And in that meeting, they placed a picture of their daughter across from me, who died in the fire. And in that meeting, the mother looked at me and said, "Where were you when my daughter was being murdered? Where were you?" If you don't think that I don't think about that every day, and I think about everyone's safety here, then you're wrong. I think about it every day. There's also another incident where my wife, school teacher, had one of her most brilliant and promising students was killed by a drunk driver. And well, let me back up, he was incinerated, okay? And if your chances of being injured or hurt here in Henderson County, it's a result of a motor vehicle collision, and it's not a homicide. So something had to be done there as well. Different format than what I had. Okay. A couple of key thoughts here. we can only do what it is that the law permits us to do. And I want people to hear some of the things that I hear on the street. And I hear this almost daily. Why can't we just go to Walmart and pick up busloads of illegal aliens? You know, and I mean, it's hard to tell people why we can't do that. And the reason it's called the Fourth Amendment to the Constitution. The Fourth Amendment to the Constitution, it essentially says the right of the people against unreasonable searches and seizures shall not be infringed, and no warrant shall issue but based upon probable cause, supported by oath or affirmation, particularly describing the person to be searched, place or the place to be searched, person to be seized. Okay, accompany that all the case law that comes in since the Fourth Amendment got online. And when I mean case law, it's judicial renderings by Supreme Court. There's could be even state issues, state Supreme Court rulings that come in. So there's a lot of buffer there. Okay, so we simply can't do that. We have to have enough to make an arrest. We have to have probable cause on each and every single person, and people just walking down the street is not probable cause. So we just can't say papers, please, and that's a misconception that's out there. Why 287G by the Sheriff's Office? Well, other than the drug trade, like what I was mentioning before, we have had a total inability to identify people that were even wanted. At the federal level, the bureaucracy is incredible. And I can assure you, out of this meeting here tonight, there will be people, this is so complex, they will take a topic that they think that will apply to them, and they'll use that in their argument on the far right. There will be people that on the far left that will do the same thing. And the answer, in my opinion, is absolutely in between. So it's so complex. I've been working on this probably a little over 2 years now, and I don't know everything about it. And our deputies don't know everything about it. And the people in the federal government will tell you they don't know anything about it. The system is broken beyond belief. But the issue is we had to do something locally. So there's two databases that are major databases that exist at the federal level. One is maintained by the Department of Justice, FBI, and the other is maintained by Homeland Security and Immigration Customs Enforcement. And those two databases don't talk. Everyone here might be under the impression, as was I, up until just a few years ago, I thought every time we arrested somebody, we'd take them down, their fingerprints would get put into an automated system, and lo and behold, if they were wanted in Oregon or wherever for a particular crime, that it would show that they were wanted. Well, that's true if you're a U.S. citizen, but it's not true if you're an illegal alien and you're wanted. So those two databases don't talk. And why those databases don't talk, it's not that there was some plan by the federal government, it's just that the FBI had their way, they wanted to do a computer system, immigrations had a database the way they wanted to do things. And those databases just grew to where they basically became unable to talk to each other. But they're starting to correct that now, and they've got some trial programs on to get those two databases to talk. There's almost no consequences for repeat offenders. We have no way of determining the people that are coming into our jail over and over and over again using false identities. So every time somebody goes up there, then they use a false name and they get away with it, it's the first offense. So it's effectively getting away with the crime. All stages of the law enforcement, and by the way, this is part of the PowerPoint that I give everywhere I go. Okay, so you're getting these slides, and the same here as where I give everywhere. All stages of law enforcement response and investigations are more lengthy and time consuming. If you can just imagine how complex it is for us to do an investigation on like a break and enter where there's a footprint and that's it. Now imagine trying to do language and cultural barriers on top of that. This is a number, probably about the only real number as far as money figures that I believe anybody's got a handle on. You can estimate this for education. You can estimate whatever it is for healthcare. This is a tangible number. There's actually a matrix that is used by us in our detention center. Well, it's detention centers all over. It breaks down the number of man hours that are worked, the percentages of the people's salaries, their duties, the electric bill, the debt service on the building. And we figured it was whenever our report was due to ICE, based on the people that we felt that were illegal in our detention facility, That number came out to about $750,000 a year. Now, bear in mind, that was before we had the ability to identify. So there could be people there from Europe, from Africa, from Australia, from China, and we had no way of determining that. This is just on Latino surnames. Let me give you a case here of a person that did a few things that we could have prevented, or ultimately something we could have prevented. Mr. Rivera was arrested in May 5th, 2000 for assault causing serious bodily injury to a family member. June 13th, 2002, he was arrested by the Hendersonville Police Department for assault on a female. December 25th, 2005, the Sheriff's Office went out to a domestic violence incident and they seized a weapon out there. There wasn't enough probable cause to arrest him at the time. On April 18th, 2006, the Sheriff's Office responded to a domestic violence incident. The suspect was arrested again for assault on a female. September 24th, 2006, the Sheriff's Office responded to a domestic violence incident and there were 2 victims at that scene. The next day, one of our canine units located this man in a wooded area near the location of the murder. This was a homicide, an attempted homicide. The victim was a female Latino, 23 years of age, girlfriend, single gunshot wound to the head. The victim number 2, male Latino, 18 months of age. Suspect was common between the victim and the suspect. Single gunshot wound to the head. Miraculously lived. Almost the same entry point, by the way. The dying baby was placed at the mother's side when our deputies arrived there. So at least he was courteous enough to put the baby at the side of the mother. The suspect is serving life to 10 years now for that incident. This was another homicide that occurred May 10th, 2006. Male victim, Latino. Victim was shot 4 times in the chest, back, right leg, and left leg. Victim had 56 grams of crystal methamphetamine on him and at the scene. This is the suspect. The victim and the suspect were roommates. More methamphetamine and paraphernalia was found at the residence. The suspect was arrested the next day at 05:30 for domestic violence against his girlfriend. Now, bear in mind, not every scene that law enforcement goes to is there the smoking gun lying on the scene and witnesses pointing at the person that says that's the person that did it. This was this case. There's any multitude of people that our detectives were interviewing. He was one of the suspects. The suspect and the victim were both previously arrested under aliases for minor offenses. The suspect bonded out on domestic violence charge and he is at large. Now, let me give you a scenario here. Had in any of these 2 cases, had that cycle been broken, had 287G been in place in Texas, had it been in place here in either incident, I can assure you that those incidents wouldn't have occurred. The cycle would have been broken somewhere. This is the same way with this case. In fact, when I went to get this file for this, and we're uncovering more and more files that have linkage like this. When I went to get this file, there was an SBI agent that had this particular file on this gentleman. And when I went up to that SBI agent, I said, well, you know, I'm glad you're working with us. You know, I'm glad you got the file, but why do you have this file? Well, it just so happens he's under investigation now. They think he's in Atlanta, and they think that he's bringing crystal methamphetamine back into this area. So not only did he get away with murder, he's bringing methamphetamine back in here. So for one of these incidents where he was booked into our detention center on a minor incident, would this have prevented the homicide? The victim, would it have prevented the homicide? Absolutely. Let me give you a few more additional examples. There was a hit and run that occurred, this was probably a little over a year ago. And there was a lady that was an elderly woman. She was in her 80s. She was struck by a motor vehicle. She was in the right, had done everything correctly. And the hit and run collision occurred. The suspect in it he wasn't drunk, he was just a bad driver, and he was a Latino that was illegal. It was his 3rd offense for hit and run, 3rd. So this was the first one with personal injury, which made it a felony. But it was his third offense. And the elderly lady, who had done everything right in her whole life, had never had any contact with law enforcement, had just lost her husband about 8 months earlier. And she paid off her car, dropped the comprehensive and collision insurance on that vehicle because she couldn't afford it anymore. And she's got to go through therapy now. Now, if you were the person that had that happen to your mother or grandmother or whomever, your friend, don't you think that we should have taken some action about that ahead of time? Don't you think the second incident should have had something happen? You'd be pretty mad at us for not doing anything, waiting till the third time. But here's the thing, it was his third offense, and this was before 287G. I don't know it for a fact, but I know he's not in jail. There's no way. We had no means to identify him. He's probably driving as we speak, and he might hit somebody the fourth time. EBT food stamp fraud. One of our deputies stopped a car for speeding. Whenever the deputy, when she asked for ID, 3 different identities fall out. When those 3 different identities fall out, they all have different names, but they're assigned to the same person. She's got them all. But what was happening was, she was going out, maxing out the EBT for what she needed, and then going out and selling to some of the Latino mercantiles the remaining food. Now, I don't know how you feel as a taxpayer, but that kind of gets me upset. The monthly average that we have for warrants, it's right around the 500 mark. It varies. And 500 sounds like a lot, but bear in mind our population is over 100,000. But there's a surge that will come out. They'll be printed out and be generated up at the clerk's office. So it's difficult to get that number down any lower than where it is. So 500 warrants. And just several months ago, 52% of those belong to people with Latino surnames. Now it's down to 36%. Again, no ability to identify, and those warrants, that's a horrific number of warrants. So, all things being equal, this program, from the criminal aspect, look at it from the law enforcement aspect, is, in my opinion, very good, very solid. The potential deportees are self-selecting. They must be under arrest for a separate offense before they're brought to our detention facility. Again, what I was talking about for the Fourth Amendment, there has to be something occur that triggers the action, the intervention of law enforcement. Because I don't want anybody coming up to anybody in my family saying the papers, please. But once you get triggered that law enforcement intervention, then that's exactly when. So arresting for any kind of a state offense, there's what we see. All the state charges must be adjudicated prior to federal custody. Department of Homeland Security reimburses the Henderson County per day per detainee, just as a note here. We have 9 deputy ICE agents. There's absolutely no loss or diversion of resources. And I hear that from time to time, well, there's a loss of resources, there's a diversion of resources. Absolutely not. My deputies are doing absolutely everything that they've done before. As a matter of fact, with percentages less warrants, they're actually able to focus on some better things to do as far as getting out there and helping people in whatever capacity you could think, more quality investigations. Just as a note, when our deputies did attend training, our county got reimbursed $40,500 to pay for the overtime and the travel expenses while they were in training for the backfill we had to do. Training lasted 4 weeks. It was held in Raleigh. 9 deputies trained. The operation started 1 July, and we have 1 full-time federal ICE agent that oversees the program. The results since 1 July, 98 illegal aliens arrested. Now, notice I used the term illegal aliens. I didn't say undocumented workers, I said illegal aliens. Undocumented, we actually have about 82 to 85% of the people that are coming into our detention center. We are able to say these people, 82 to 85% of the people that are foreign-born coming in need to have some type of action taken against them, meaning an ICE detainer, immigration's detainer. So not everybody is, it's like what you were talking about earlier, not everybody warrants deportation. They might have that expired green card. They might have that passport. And our deputies help them to try to get that.
The federal government doesn't want them in the system, and our deputies are able to point them in the right direction. It's amazing how nobody ever, we say that repeatedly. And so when something's expired, that kind of thing, our deputies help them. But it's about 82 to 85% that we're seeing coming in through the system are deportable. 98 illegal aliens arrested. There's actually a few more that are in the system. Actually brings it up to about 101, but 98's the total accurate figure for today. Arrested charges, why they were brought into the detention center: 25 driving while impaired, 24 for traffic, and that could be anything from left to center, speeding, whatever any variety of a U.S. citizen is arrested for, that's what they would be arrested for. 6 alcohol-related, 5 for robbery, 10 for drugs, 7 assault, 1 trespass, 5 domestic violence, 2 reentry to the U.S., and 1 juvenile. The remaining, it breaks down into some miscellaneous categories of child abuse, felony obstruction of justice, fugitive, identity theft, fleeing through arrest. As far as the country breakdown, 89 from Mexico, 1 from Honduras, 1 from El Salvador, 4 from Guatemala, 1 Colombia, 1 Indonesia, and 1 from Cuba. I'll be happy to answer any questions. Is this when you want to? Okay. Ad lib here, whatever. So, a couple things of what I hear. When I hear somebody say that somebody was scared to go out and to get whatever service that is, well, if we can't have the ability, there's people in prison all over the United States, and they were arrested for minor offenses. And ultimately, there are major things that occur out there. Criminals tend to stay in a very closed loop system. I can assure you that people that come into our detention center, with very few exceptions, have had contact with law enforcement repeatedly. So will there be somebody with the occasional no operator's license that could get deported? Absolutely. But do you want the murderer living next door to you? Do you want the methamphetamine trafficker living next door to you? How many people will we prevent from becoming the victim of a crime because this program is online? Here again, this is my sworn duty, and I take it very seriously. And, when you get that picture put in front of you, where were you when your wife's one of the most promising students was killed by a drunk driver? You see 25 drunk drivers arrested here. That's serious stuff. That is very serious. I think that again, it's so complicated. I think people have a tendency to pick and choose from the whole system as far as what they see, what their take on it is. But in my opinion, it's very clear that this is a great program, and there's no telling how many crimes that we'll prevent. It's the crimes that are prevented. Look at the minor offenses, and look at people like Timothy McVeigh, picked up on a speeding charge, blew up the Oklahoma City Federal Building. Look at Son of Sam, all those homicides that he occurred. Guess what? A parking ticket did him in. So everything's relevant when it comes to criminal law enforcement. Greg, and this is Emmanuel Zaragoza, by the way. He's one of our ICE trained deputies, and very proud of him and all the work that he's doing there on the program. Just however you want to work this from here, Greg, do you want to speak? I talk too much is what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, this is the time when you can raise a question. If you have a question for the sheriff, or you have a question for representatives from the Latino Advocacy Coalition, or if you have a question of me, I'll be happy to try to answer that. Are there any questions? Yes.
Do you have any prevention when you, like what I know, being an immigrant, that, for example, to give papers to my brother as a U.S. citizen now, it takes 10 to 12 years to get papers to that brother. That's a long time. That's a lifetime. Why can immigration do faster? That's another discussion, but when you find people that have papers in the works, do you have prevention for it, or what do you do with it? I'm just curious because I know of many, many people that are in the country trying to get those papers because it takes forever to just extend a visa. You need a 2-week extension because you're in the country for 6 weeks. It takes up to a year to get an extension for 2 weeks.
Again, like the sheriff said, it's our duty to perform our job. So therefore, we set up an appointment between that person and an immigration judge. That person goes before an immigration judge, and the judge then decides what happens. That it's really not up to us to decide.
I'm having a little bit of difficulty trying to absorb the information that I just heard, but one of the things that's really stopping me is you said that 36% of the warrants out are for illegals?
Latino surnames.
Okay, Latino surnames, which means the majority are for white legal citizens.
Well, it could be from any country in the world, not just the United
Just
States.
not Latino. And I've also heard many stories similar to the ones that you told tonight. Drunk drivers that have been arrested and they're back on the streets and they're arrested again, and they are not necessarily Latino. So I'm having a hard time understanding why the 287G is necessary specifically for the Latino community.
If we had a program called 597F that addressed the citizens, and if I could get them out of my jurisdiction by whatever means available, I would do it. A drunk driver on the road is a hazard to everyone. Again, statistically, if you get injured or killed in Henderson County, it's going to be as a result of a motor vehicle collision. So as far as enforcing it on one group or the other, a drunk driver is a drunk driver, and that's a large bomb that's traveling down the road. In my opinion, that's irrelevant. It's a drunk driver is a drunk driver. As far as the consequences of it, we're paid to enforce the law. We don't implement it. We're the ones that get the marching orders effectively from the state and the federal government. And you know, it's almost like what I almost hear in that is very much like pick and choose which laws we enforce. And that's absolutely, you know, we just can't do that. And I don't care what the offense is. If the laws are there and they're set, my opinion is very clear. Go to the legislatures and change them because they listen. I mean, they do. I mean, virtually every topic that I've gone to them on, they listen and they will take it to the floor. So good, bad, or indifferent, take it to the legislators if whatever law that you select needs to be altered.
In other words, you run an NCIC check, you're not, that's what the whole point of the 287G is. You have NCIC for American citizens that can run that criminal background check, National Crime Information Center, run that criminal background check. But if I understood you right at the very beginning, that's not an option with an immigrant. So it's just
right.
an immigrant status.
Depending on the circumstance, you're probably not going to be in the database. You may be in the federal database, but may not be. So it's a dice roll whether somebody may get into that database or not. Usually not.
And that's the point of the 287G.
And 287G identifies
I think
that.
that's what
correct.
I was trying to get.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
I have a question. I hear, well, first of all, I agree with this program in the sense that it's getting our criminals out and caughting them and putting them in jail, which is great. But what I have a question is, okay, you stop a white fellow like you, all right, for whatever. Didn't use a turn signal or ran a stoplight or whatever. Just because it looks white, blue eyes, do you go and check his legal status? He may be from Europe. He may be here legally. But I only hear the brown skin like me are being checked and are being verified with this program. Do you have, I'm not saying that you don't do it, but there's nothing out there that says, you know, we detained 10 people, they're white, and we checked them and 2 of those were illegal. They're always talking about the Latinos, the Mexicans, the Cubans, or whatever, but I don't see, if there is none that are happening, I really think this program is discriminatory against brown skin like me, because that program, as I understand, it doesn't say only Latinos can be checked with this program. It's for all illegals, regardless if they're black, white, Asian, or whatnot. So do you have any data on that that can prove to me as a citizen that you are doing this the right way, not discriminating against a particular segment of the population?
Okay, if that was the case, why would there be 52% of the warrants that were active at one time against Latinos before the program ever got in place?
Do you have a data that says out of those 52%, or the ones that you detained since the program started July 1st, how many of those that you checked their names, their aliases or whatnot with the immigration database? Have you done that?
Yeah, my advice is solid. Don't be arrested. You don't get hooked up on the database.
I'm asking you that, sir. I'm asking you a specific question. Do you have, you're avoiding the question.
I don't understand your question then, sir.
It's simple. I just said it. How many white individuals you have detained that you have checked their status, legal status?
All of them were checked.
We check 100% of the people coming into the detention center are checked. Regardless, right, 100%. And it's for the reason you cite. Let me give you an example. Right before we started up 287G program, there's a manual way to queue into the system on a computer, somebody that gives us their name and their date of birth and the city they were born in, okay? So ahead of 287G, what we did was type into that system people who were, you know, then when they gave us their name and date of birth, that kind of thing. Well, how many people do you think ever lied to law enforcement? I mean, it's very common. I mean, it's a lot, right? Just on that, we got about, I want to say it was 60 some odd people from January to July, about 60 some odd people that gave us their correct name, their correct date of birth. We got a hit back on them in the system. One of the first persons that we actually arrested and identified for deportation was Chinese national, very violent gang member. My advice to him, he shouldn't have been out trying to stab somebody with a knife. You know, very simple. And that would never have drawn the attention of law enforcement. The majority of the people in this audience have never had contact with law enforcement, the vast majority. So here again, criminals stay in a closed loop system. If they've had encounters with somewhere before, they'll have it again and again and again. So if we're checking everybody and we arrest them for the violation of a crime, that's discriminating against criminals is what it's doing. You know? From my perception is, it's checking people of all races that are here in the country illegally, whether they're Latino or not. Tell that to the person from Indonesia. Tell it to the person from China. You know, I mean, they're deported too.
Yeah, but they're all brown skinned. You're talking about those. See, that's
the person from China was not brown skinned.
Well, they're not. They're
Yeah.
not white.
Other questions here. First hand I saw was over there.
Sheriff, your counterparts in Buncombe County, Sheriff Duncan and the Asheville Police have said that they see 287G as imprecise, specifically because it's picking up too many people on misdemeanors, and that they see the Criminal Alien Assistance Program as a much more precise way to target violent criminals, which is why they've opted for the CAP program in the Buncombe County Jail. So I'd like if you could explain to people the basic difference between CAAP and 287G and all the examples that you put up on the screen of the violent criminals and the crimes that could have been committed. Wouldn't those people have been vetted under the CAAP program?
No, they would not. The CAP program, again, those databases are going to start to talk now. There are 4 pilot programs that are occurring in North Carolina, and North Carolina is a pilot program for the nation to merge these databases because it's very complex. It was Cumberland, Wake, Gaston, I'm talking about the interoperability. Is Buncombe, Henderson, Wake, and Gaston. Right, and they're the ones, they're not on interoperability. No, it was 4. It's Buncombe, Henderson, Gaston, Wake. Right, and that means those databases at their detention centers are going to start talking. And they wanted primarily 287G sites because when a person did get fingerprinted under that separate database, they wanted to be able to deal with that person there and not have to send the resources to, Dare County, for instance, in order to send somebody to pick that person up, because there's time frames that we have to go by once a person's identified. The difference between CAP and 287G. The CAP program will identify people that are already in the system. The people that have had their fingerprints on file, that have committed some type of an offense, and they are wanted by immigrations. And 287G goes beyond that. 287G identifies not just the people that are wanted, but anybody that is potentially a person that is illegal. So that's the difference between the two. As far as it being imprecise, well, I disagree, and I think it's very effective. Those people would be alive. It was Latino victims, Latino suspects, and if that person, like for the first homicide that I showed you, had he been identified in Texas, I feel very confidently that he may never even made it to Henderson County, North Carolina to commit the homicide. And he certainly, if he was picked on a minor offense of an assault type charge, I feel very confidently he would not have been a system. It would have broken that cycle of domestic violence and it would have separated those individuals. So as far as it being an imprecise tool, I would argue with you, because here's what's going to happen. It's the crimes that will be prevented are the ones that, it's the ones that you're never going to see. That's what's critical. Everybody everybody's not, that's a bad person is not a big hideous ogre that has this huge criminal record. That gentleman that committed that first homicide, that was his criminal history, what I showed you up there. So those were relatively minor offenses that he got picked up for, and CAP would not have identified him. So,
can I ask a follow-up?
I'll leave this to the narrator.
Let's open it up just a little bit here. Over here.
I have a question for the sheriff about the checks that the police set up, and I don't understand, and maybe this is me being innocent, but you were saying that the Fourth Amendment, you can't go into Walmart and stop people, but what makes you able to set up a driving check to check everything? And then on top of that, you were saying, like, I completely agree, I don't want anybody in the United States that is harmful to me, regardless of no matter what they are. And I feel like, yeah, you showed me evidence of Latinos, but I can tell you from my own experience, and I'm young, that I've seen other things that white people have committed.
Sure,
suicide.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
I guess my thing is like, I know a lot of Latinos that I want to stay in our community, and I know a lot that I don't, and I've seen things that scare me, and I've seen things that don't. But what makes me upset is that when they get stopped and don't have a driver's license, they get arrested, they get put in detention or whatever you want to say, and they get deported, and they've not done a crime except not have a driver's license. And they weren't brought here by choice. They were underage, went through school, couldn't go to college, started driving, got stopped, get deported, and don't even speak Spanish.
Okay. Then what you're saying is don't enforce a no operator's license charge on anyone is what you're saying. I'm trying to help me out here.
I mean, I guess I just don't understand. Like, I understand the 287G in terms of trying to find criminals. Is that the purpose of it? And is not having a driver's license because you're born here or you're here brought over by a family member who had to work because they couldn't make a living where they came from, and they get stopped and they're getting deported and they don't even have an option?
Okay, here again, think about what you're trying to say here. If a driver's license, if it's just a driver's license,
yeah.
That's an arrestable misdemeanor.
Okay.
You don't want it, let's just hypothetically say you don't want anybody that's Latino, that's hardworking, arrested for a driver's license, okay? Well, should we enforce that same law on a U.S. citizen, yes or no? All right, see? Well, that's the
But
predicament.
I know a lot of American citizens who don't have driver's licenses. They don't get deported away. I mean, where do they go?
Okay, but here's the thing. Remember what I said earlier? We're here to enforce the law, okay?
No, I'm not saying, but I mean, what does that person get? A ticket for not having a driver's license?
In almost all cases of no operator's license, in almost all cases, unless there's something else, drugs, drunk, something like that, most people, Latino included, get citations and they are released.
Yeah, but I know someone who didn't have a driver's license, got put in jail, got deported for strictly only not having a driver's license.
Do you know everybody that I've heard that has said that?
I'm sure you say a million.
Well, I'm serious. I got a call about that from somebody not that long ago. That's all the reason he was picked up. That's the only thing, was no operator's license. Well, guess what? There was drugs in the car.
Oh, yeah.
There was, the person was going 30 miles an hour over the speed limit, and there was drugs and
But what about if the driver
I'm sorry, it wasn't enough to blow legal for DWI. Yeah. But, and then when you trace it back, you go down and get the report on it. Well, it wasn't just the NOL.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm not saying, I guess my question is, if that is the only case of them not having a driver's license, will they still be deported?
It is up to an immigration court.
Okay.
It is up to an immigration court. It is not up to us.
But what is your job? Like, if somebody came
Our
up
job
to me
is to
tomorrow,
arrest anybody, citizen, non-citizen, any human being that arrests the law. Our job is to see to it that the public is out here as safe as possible, period. It is up to us to enforce the law, okay? So regardless of citizen or U.S. citizen, non-citizen, the job is to do the job out there in the field to keep people as safe as possible. Those include traffic offenses. As far as your original question, as far as driver's license checks, they are routinely, the Supreme Court has upheld time and time and time again. A motor vehicle does not have the inherent protectability of you in your home or you simply walking down the street. Operating a motor vehicle in the state of North Carolina is a privilege, and it has been consistently upheld that law enforcement can do routine checkpoints in order to enforce that privilege that they have. Very effective tool for getting drugs and drunks off the street, I can assure you. As a matter of fact, when there's license checks set up, it's scary because it's all the deputies can do, just as fast as they can go to write tickets and to get people on their way looking for those drunks or drugs that are coming through. Yes, sir.
Most of the people, I would think, that don't have a driver's license also don't have insurance. And if they don't have insurance and they run into you and injure you or some member of your family, who pays for it? Who suffers? Your family does.
but Americans
Not to,
can do the same thing.
it goes the same for Americans or foreigners. If you don't have a driver's license, you don't have insurance, you're arrested and put in jail, and if you're a foreigner and you're here illegally, you should be shipped away.
And not having
That's
insurance
simple.
is a misdemeanor.
Okay.
That's a misdemeanor.
I don't care if it's a misdemeanor.
What is a misdemeanor? What I'm saying is this is
Illegal. Illegal is illegal.
It's a crime.
We have a question in the back.
As opposed to
Yes,
offense.
ma'am.
This question is for Sheriff Davis. I have been living in this city for a little over 4 years now, and it's a wonderful city, and I've loved living here. I have a congregation in this city of about 50 people. Of the 50 people, 46 are Caucasian, 45 are Caucasian, and 5 are 3 African American, and 2 are Burmese. Since this process has come to our city, 4 of the 5 have been stopped. And they were all stopped in a 2-week period, and all got the same excuse. For instance, when I was stopped, I asked, she said, may I see your driver's license and your registration? I gave that to her. She came back. She says, you're okay. Have a safe day. I said, can I ask you why you stopped me? Well, I couldn't get a fix on your tag number. I said, why did you have
Get what, I'm sorry?
Excuse me?
Get a what on your tag number?
I couldn't get a fix on your tag number. And I said, so what does that mean? She says, for some reason, your tag number didn't show up on my, whatever she has when I punched it in. And so I said, but why did you have a need to punch it in? I mean, was I zigzagging across the line? Was I speeding? I knew I wasn't doing that because the cars were flashing their lights coming this way to say somebody's name. So I knew I was well within the, you know. And so she said, oh, no, but don't worry about it. I said, do worry about it. I said, you wouldn't be profiling because I'm brown and you see that I'm not a Mexican now. Would you be doing that? She said, oh, no, we don't do that. So I said, well, it's so strange to me that out of 50 people in my congregation, just the ones that are African American have all been stopped in 2 weeks. Nothing wrong, no zigzagging, no speeding, no drunk driving, nothing wrong, and the same excuse, I couldn't, your tag number didn't pop up. So I have concerns like that maybe there is profiling going on, and if so, it is just not the face of I have known in this community over the years.
What was the officer's name?
She was a female, and I did write her name down. I have it in my car.
Okay. Anytime that you're stopped by any law enforcement officer, and that we're not talking just 287G or whatever it is, if you feel like that officer goes outside the parameters of professional conduct, I think it's your obligation as a citizen to give us a call. We're not a citizen. You call us. You call us. Okay. If they're operating outside that. Now, with that said, vehicles can be stopped. I mean, why it's public info. Your tag is information that's there. The officers have a right to run that tag. You just don't avert your gaze. Oh, there's a tag. They have computers in their cars now where they put the tags in, and we have gotten many stolen vehicles back because they're doing such a volume of them now because it's through that computer. So they do have the right to run your tag. Okay. And no profiling. If you think that there's profiling, then it's your obligation to do something about it and let us know. You know, but here's the thing. You've got to get. It's more than accusations. All right. There has to be, just in the same way, we have to have probable cause and reasonable suspicion. I think that's incumbent upon you to show something other than just talk and just saying that this is an accusation that's made. So we take it. I can assure you that the law enforcement officers take it very, very seriously. And whenever there's a complaint that comes in on anybody, they know they don't want to see us coming because we don't want it either. That's not the way we work. I think it's wishful thinking on a lot of people's part.
A lot of questions here.
This gentleman over here.
This gentleman right here.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I have a question for Sheriff Davis. In your presentation, you cited about 24 people have been put through the system on traffic is what was the heading for those violations. Of those 24, were all of them have something to do other than a minor traffic violation, such as driving excessively over the speed limit or drugs in the car? And if not, I think we've heard you several times throughout the community state when you were rolling out this program that this program was not going to focus on minor traffic offenses or nonviolent crimes.
Go back and tell that boy, do you think that this minor offense, that same question. Yes.
You were just talking to this gentleman. This paper is February the 11th, 2007. Your quote, I saw no rebuttal in further papers saying you are rebutting. This is your quote. Only persons arrested, charged with a crime, and taken to the detention center would have their immigration status checked. Fast forward, a traffic citation is not an arrest. Typically, driving without a license is a citation, not an arrest, Davis said. Only if another charge is involved, such as driving while impaired or drugs, is a traffic offender arrested. If I was arrested today for no tag, would you take me to the detention center?
No. No tag.
No tag.
It would depend on the circumstances.
No. Yes or no? Standard operating procedure.
It depends
if
on
I were
circumstances.
stopped For my tag being expired, would I go to the detention center?
It depends.
Okay, this is depending on.
It depends on the circumstances. Is it an arrestable offense for not having a tag, is what you're saying, or a license?
Any minor traffic citation.
You can be arrested.
But standard operating procedure is every single person, white, black, polka dotted, Latino, or is every person taken to the detention center, yes or no?
Not everybody is arrested for every offense.
Okay, I am Spanish. I don't look it, do I? But I am. I am Spanish. So most people looking at me would view me as an Anglo-female. And I probably wouldn't be taken.
Are you from Spain?
My mother's family is from Spain, yes, sir.
Well, then you're European just like everybody else.
If there is an arrestable misdemeanor that is present, and the officer decides to arrest you, we arrest people for minor offenses, for major offenses. We let people go. We write them tickets. It's just part of what we do.
Yes, sir, but in 2007, you said you would not be taking people. Excuse me, please. This is your quote. You didn't rebut it. You said that is not an arrest that would require the detention center. Only people that went to the detention center. Yet, on September the 6th, you have right here 1/4 of the people that were arrested for illegal aliens, 83 illegals arrested. 1/4 of those violations were minor traffic violations. So, are you really not profiling?
We are really not profiling.
I don't believe you.
Everyone's entitled to their opinion, absolutely. But you know, here again, you don't have the luxury of seeing it from people that have had their family members killed. I mean, you see that from only one side and one side only.
I want to ask you a question, sir.
You're not allowed.
Don't allow me to ask any.
What I want to ask you is, if I'm a Latino person, and I'm here, my visa's expired, I'm working, I have no other offense other than the fact that I'm not documented properly. I get stopped for speeding on Four Seasons. Now, the question is, what would you advise me to do when the officer walks up to the window?
Give them your license.
Give them my license. Then what would happen to me?
It depends. It depends on the circumstance. It depends on the officer. It depends on if the offense is an arrestable misdemeanor. It told me about an incident that happened where there was a Latino that was involved with a minor fender bender, and that Latino, it wasn't even over. It was under $500 damage. The deputy that was out there at the scene actually called the sergeant to ask if, hey, this guy he's a little bit intoxicated. He's no operator's license. And I would arrest him, and she was so sensitive about the issue, she asked for permission from the sergeant. What should I do? What should I do? And had that deputy, this is how sensitive I believe the officers are out there, was so sensitive to the issue that had she closed her eyes and said, if this was a Caucasian, she would have taken him to jail. She wouldn't have called the supervisor. So they take it very seriously.
Yeah.
Eileen, you were.
Rick, I was glad to hear you say that you do everybody. Months ago, I talked to you about this, and I asked you the same question. Do you do profiling? The answer was no, and I believe you. However, I think there's a lot of confusion about what's happening. Mr. McCain was on television today announcing his program on immigration, okay? And he said, the biggest problem we got is 50,000 Irish who are illegal immigrants in this country. I was, what? I tried to hear it again. He said it several times. So apparently there are others. I also know that there's Russian immigrants who are in here that are part of mafia that shouldn't be here. So I hope that you are checking them all. However, I think the important thing that everybody here is concerned about is when you say it depends, is there anything that your officers have that really tell them, this is when you do that, and this is when you don't? And I would rather that, like your other woman officers went and called the sergeant and say, hey, I'm not sure what to do, rather than taking whoever it was that was talking about, taking the license and saying, well, it didn't check. I think that's a little bit saying, it makes it suspicious. And I don't think you want to be put in that position either.
We have recurrent training at the sheriff's office and with all law enforcement agencies. And once a year, when the deputies or the police officers, when they go through, but in my case with the deputies, before we started the 287G program, what I told them very specifically was, close your eyes, what would you do? And that is the hallmark of what to do. What are you going to do when it is the person that's out there for no operator's license? What are you going to do when it's the person for assault, that type of thing? And so if the answer is, when they close their eyes, I would arrest this person, then that's the right call. But see, the thing is, the moment that if we start getting very specific with parameters on arrest this person under this circumstance or don't arrest this person under this circumstance, you're starting a whole chain of events there. I mean, here again, are we going to only let the people that are Latino go? I mean, it's what's the answer? You know, right? Well, but you know, the thing is, the job day in, day out, it's a difficult job. And so it's not just this, it's any other scope of what you can talk about. And they're making those decisions day in, day out. So the ultimate answer is, what would you do? And close your eyes. If this person needs to go to jail, they need to go to jail.
Rick, if I just got on the police force, I hope you wouldn't tell me just to close my eyes.
Well, you know, here's the thing. We put officers through a lot of training.
Good.
We put them through a lot of recurrent training, and if one of the rank and file deputies calls up to a supervisor to do that, that shows you the caliber of people that are out there. You know, I mean, that's how sensitive they are to the issue.
I hope they are.
You know, everybody here talking the license checks, everything. Well, here's the thing. We had a license check, a big license check on I believe it was the 3rd of July. 49 people were issued citations for no operators. 49. Of those 49, 42 had Latino surnames. Only one was arrested, one and only one. All the rest were issued citations and released. You know, so you know, why doesn't anybody bring that up? You know, the other thing is the one that was arrested. He was so drunk. How the man made it there without killing anybody is beyond me. Oh, and by the way, he was an MS-13 gang member. So, you know, I think that everybody's doing one heck of a good job out there, personally. So.
Well,
is it perfect? Nothing in the judicial system is?
I want to ask you another question, if I may. We have approximately.
Had her hand up for half an hour.
Okay, just a minute.
Hi, I'm a hardworking American taxpayer, and I'm fed up with illegal immigration. The key word is illegal, and I want to thank the sheriff for doing what he did in Hendersonville. I just returned from Washington, and on 9/11, I sat through a congressional hearing on people that were killed by illegal aliens. And it was heartbreaking to see a 17-year-old boy killed in his front yard by a gang member in LA. A mother with a 17-year-old daughter that was raped and murdered, 2 police officers, and every one of these criminals had long previous records, child molestation and on and on. There was a sheriff there from Prince William County in Virginia, and he was saying how successful the 287G program has been there. And in fact, 20% of their criminal problem has been eliminated, and they've all moved to Fairfax County. I would like the criminals to belong to another county too, and I don't know why anybody illegal. Thank you, Sheriff.
somebody in the back here has been.
I read the articles in the paper, and they use that word fear. It's governed by laws.
That's right.
I've been stopped several times. They want to see a driver's license. They want to see a registration card. And they know if I've been drinking or not. They know that when they get through checking all. So if you don't have the driver's license and the insurance card, they're going to take you to jail. Now there's nothing profiling about that. Sometimes there's 15 or 20 of them. So I don't know how you can racial profile when there's 10 back here and 10 that way. And there's 4 sheriff's cars or 4 highway patrol cars. I don't know how you racial profile that. So I don't understand these vehicles and racial profiling when you get stopped in these license checks. I don't know how you racial profile that.
Thank you very much.
I'd like to address it to the sheriff. Sheriff, has it made it more difficult or less difficult to do your job since North Carolina will not issue an operator's license to someone because of immigration status?
As far as doing our job on the street, I would say that the deputies are probably, the police officers, the troopers are probably busier because they're writing more citations. But as far as like a tangible number, the issuance of the license to a correlation to have how busy we are, I really don't know. But I do know that there's a large number of NOLs, no operator's licenses, that are being charged not just here but across the state, very large number. So that factor is busy. So.
Many of those people that were undocumented had valid licenses, and now they're not renewing that. Am I correct? Is that a correct statement?
Yep, that's correct.
They've been driving with a license, but now they can't get it renewed, so now they're getting picked up more and more in this criminal.
It's good.
One of the regulations of the Henderson County Library is that we have to be out of here time to clean up and close up at 9. I'm very sorry. If you have a question, I'm sure if you want to ask Sheriff Davis, he'll be here for a few minutes to answer that question. I would remind you, there are sheets on the back. If you're interested in signing the document that we are welcoming, or we want to be a welcoming community, please pick one up. You can go to our website and sign that. Thank you very much for taking your time to come in.
It gets skewed. If they're brown, they must be scary. And it's not that, okay? Good to see you. And I was out tonight with Southern Sam.
Oh, really?
Yes.
I don't need to.
I just wanted to say that this program is great. We're from Los Angeles. Oh my God. Oh, yeah. Where the sheriff's deputies were never, it was written out, it was
Spanish in your community, and you've got 10 who are European. What's the likelihood that the Hispanics are going to help with your books?